Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone has having a wonderful day after watching these videos. Stay with us to see the excellent news of sister wives. Please hit the subscribe button and watching this video. June 24th, 2024, and for the first time, I saw a video of a Brown's family member, Kody Brown's nephew, without one of his children, but one who has no NDA. I'm not afraid to say it, isn't concerned about a show being canceled. Not bound by protecting their family, of course, and his nephew Ben gives a decent overview of polygamy and the first episode of Sister Wives. Yesterday, last week, I shared with you his initial reaction, where he was laughing about how the whole show was going to be about trying to force Kody. He has a mistress in his family, and this particular synopsis is about his distaste for Kody, and the whole show is about Kody. And he had some very fine words and thoughts about Kody. And I would say it's very different from Ben's a few years ago. I actually talked to Ben a few years ago via Zoom, and he's actually going to be on my channel. And lo and behold, he found out who I was and that his family didn't like me, and he canceled. It's nice to see him, using a platform and talking about the show and polygamy in a way that can reach people. And as a man, his perspective is unique because he knows what it's like to be a man in the system, what it's like to be a trafficked child, what it's like to be a neglected child, what's it like to be a boy thrown out of the system. And he had a lot to say in this brief. So in the beginning, you saw that he called it kind of gross, the way Kody was positioned on the show, like it was a big family and Kody might like the idea of a family. But in reality, it wasn't very good to have a family. Here are some other things that he said. Mr. Ben says, "Mike, I think that he's in love with the idea of having a really big, awesome family and not actually doing the work of engaging in the real relationships of that family. It actually reminds me of my dad quite a lot. My dad had this shirt that he wore all the time growing up, where it said anyone can be a father. It takes someone special to be a daddy," which he took as being like he was a daddy, right? Like he was a special person. He wasn't just a father, he was a daddy. But he never did in any of the things that a daddy would do. Like he never played with me with my Legos. That's what I would have wanted for my daddy. He never did that. If I were to ask him today what one of my favorite things as a kid was, it was dinosaurs. I doubt that he could tell you, meaning that he didn't actually know who I was. He just liked the idea of being a dad. But being a dad is more than just an idea. It's actually engaging in the lives of your children and taking an interest in them and helping them out, none of which my dad did. And it doesn't really seem like that's how Kody shows up. Something he said resonated with me when he was talking about how his father was. If you ask his father right now what his favorite thing was as a child, he probably doesn't know or remember because he doesn't know. Because a normal, he did not do the things that father used to do. Also because he wasn't around, and he was always working or had another wife. And so the idea is that they like the idea of being a father, and they like the idea of having a family. They just don't want to be involved in the family. They just stared. The kid is something that represents a number to them, a family. They're not a person. And that's something I've talked about a lot on this channel in this system, as it is designed. There is no place for time. No time indeed. Men do not have time to engage with children, and children are not seen in the same capacity as children in our world. So a father, a normal father who has a spouse, and wants to have a child. If they're in a partnership that they're still together and involved with that child, and hopefully has a good relationship with the child and the child. Play and learn about children, but in polygamy they don't. And when they do show up, it's late and they're tired, and they want sex and kids are an afterthought. And Ben actually goes further on this. So he talks about how fathers don't have enough time in polygamy to be good fathers. And there's not enough time for anybody because everybody's so taxed, and for the first time, you're actually hearing someone in his family say, "Listen, my dad wasn't a good dad, and I don't think Kody is a good dad. I think he likes the idea of being a father. I just don't think he's a good father because he's not involved with them." Ben says, and the catchphrase "love should be multiplied," not divided is stupid and dumb. Because what is love if not attention and time? And you have finite attention and time as a parent, as a spouse. And so, if you are dividing up that attention and time among 18 children and 4 wives, it is divided. So you can spout all of the lovely nonsense of like, oh, we're multiplying our love. But the actual reality is that you're not spending time with those family relationships because you have too many of them. That's actually one of my biggest problems with polygamy as a lifestyle in general, is that it's not good for children. Because children require a lot of attention, and you don't get a lot of attention when you're a polygamous child. You get very little. And not only do you get very little, the older children often end up becoming the parents of the younger children, which is exactly what we saw in episode 1 with Logan. Logan is essentially acting as the dad of his siblings. His mom wakes up early, goes to work. He gets up, makes the kids breakfast, gets them ready for school, sends them off to school. And you hear? And he's just dutifully doing it because he's a good fucking kid. And then you hear him on the end. He's like, yeah, this is pretty much how it goes. That's pretty much how it goes in big families like that. Finally, an adult in the Brown family is saying it. That polygamy is not good for children. Although Christine, Janelle, and Meri are gone, they do not admit that the practice of polygamy was harmful to their children. They don't recognize that their children could have been better off, that they could have had a better life if they grew up in monogamy. They still admire the way their family worked and are glad they worked the way they did. They wouldn't do anything separately, but say in the same breath that Kody wasn't around much. He didn't give the kids equal time. So it's like, you'll hear them say, I wouldn't change a thing, and polygamy still works as long as it works. But then you hear them say, Kody was never around. Kody ended up with Robyn. My kids felt preferential treatment. So polygamy didn't really work. And Ben's like, yeah, there's no. It doesn't work because there's not enough time. You've got too many relationships. You've got too many kids. You've got too many wives. You literally can't spend enough time with anybody and your kids end up having them. Because there are many children being raised by siblings there are and mothers are either sad, depressed, lonely, or having to work all together because dad can't afford all the kids and they have to find some level to support themselves. And then you've got kids like Logan who spends most of his time taking care of his kids. And to this day, Logan plays the role of father to his siblings, and he shouldn't. Like, I'm glad Janelle has Logan, but she shouldn't be the father. He should just be allowed to be Logan. He should have just been allowed to be a child. He should have been allowed not to take all these responsibilities as a child. They'll say they like teaching their kids responsibility, but really, they say it because they have to find the silver lining to it. Did they want their children to do this? No, but they had because that was their reality. That's how Christine grew up, so that's all she knew. That's how Meri grew up, so she knew. But Janelle didn't grow up that way. But Janelle didn't have a dad around, so she felt that dad was enough about 1/3 of the time. It's all sad. But Ben is literally telling the truth here. An increase in the number of loves does not actually divide the family. Ben says, it's also really interesting to pay attention to the body language of everyone involved as they're talking, because there's a lot of sort of saying the right things and then shaking the heads no. Like at one point, Christine is talking about how she's so excited for, Robyn and Kody to do the thing because gosh darn it, they better. And she's shaking her head like this. Gosh darn it, they better. This narrative that I hear over and over and over again in that episode, which is that women are the ones choosing this. But it's always a man saying that. Like Kody says, my mom chose this worldview. He tells that story. He talks about how Meri chose us. There's a lot of talking by men about how the women are the ones in charge, and that the women are in choice, and that the women have freedom. And isn't it great how much freedom the women have? There were quite a few things in this episode that really rubbed me the wrong way. One of them was when everyone was like chasing a little Gwen around trying to pull her teeth, even though she's obviously said no. And this is just a real clear example of the total lack of bodily autonomy that exists in Mormon culture. Basically, Mormonism teaches you, grooms you from a very young age to override people's physical boundaries. All the time. It's actually a key part of the Mormon temple experience is to be physically touching people without their knowledge or consent in a way to override their bodily autonomy. I see that a lot in that episode with the Gwen thing, with Kody demanding kisses and hugs from people, even though they don't really want to. It's just weird and uncomfortable. It was also really disturbing how often Kody referred to Meri as being the bait because number one, Meri's a person, and number two, what do you use? Paid for. It's interesting, isn't it? He's seen a lot of what you and I see on the show where we can see they're saying something, but you can tell they're saying something different or they're feeling something different like Christine. Kody wants to have sex with Robyn, but you know that's not true anymore. The women all said that they chose the stake in, which is not true. They are ready and motivated to choose it. They are told that they have to choose it. They are told that they should take a husband, a man who already has another wife, and marry them. And the other part that I found interesting is how here he is talking about Gwen in that episode. They're chasing her around the house trying to get a tooth out, and she doesn't want them to get the tooth out yet. And to say that kind of overrides the idea that, as such, the body's autonomy doesn't exist in the system. Now, he was probably triggered by it. I didn't necessarily like it, I don't know. I don't see it in that worldview, but maybe it's something that he felt, and it's just an example to him, that they don't respect Gwendolyn's boundaries like that. But he points out that Kody demands kisses from people, demands people touch him, calls Meri bait. Finally, someone in the family literally calls it out and says it's kind of gross that Kody would call her bait because she's a woman. I cut the clip where he was talking about how polygamy is the reason why it's almost impossible for men not to be narcissists. It's built around the guy, and the whole show is built around Kody and his experiences. So it's about Kody, his wife, his kids, his car, his experience, his narrative, and how it's harmful to both men and women. Because it puts men in a godlike position, and no one else is given this much attention and is told that they are innocent and it's about them. So they won't be susceptible to being narcissistic. And I've heard it over and over. Like men in this culture, they become narcissists because of how they are told that they are the center of the universe, and you can like and I can say, look, nobody is the center of the universe, but there's nobody to tell them apart in this system. Like if their whole life is centered around them and their whole family is centered around his life, he doesn't have to give in to anyone because he is the center. He is God, and he is the narcissist, which Ben says. I finally hear someone in the family say it in passing, and Ben says the same thing. The recap also talks about how polygamy has this part where you're told not to say anything publicly because you have to protect the family, because you need to protect polygamy, and therefore you do not hear anything about what happens in the family. You are acting like you are not protecting the family. You are not defending polygamy. You are not keeping the faith. You're not protecting the family name, which makes it hard for people to speak up, because then they're ashamed and humiliated, and people don't believe them, which Ben says he's experienced. I mean, even Mackle says he doesn't necessarily believe what Ben went through. Like, how do you question Ben's experience when it's his experience? Ben said, that part where Christine says that. She really loved Kody a lot. And he kind of loved her is very indicative of what's to come. It's polygamy in a nutshell. The women all are supposed to love the men, and the men are sort of supposed to love the women, kind of. And it's also indicative of the way that polygamy brainwashes young girls into believing that marrying married men is preferable to marrying single men. This is something that's happened to multiple of my sisters, and my dad has kind of made that happen by using his priesthood authority to give them blessings, which are basically like prophetic visions of their future, telling them that they'll marry someone who's already married. So then they do later on in their life, and they choose it. But they've been groomed to think that since they were like 3. So Kody's job is to collect lots of women so he can get to heaven. And he doesn't actually have to like all the women because he's going to collect more. And if she doesn't meet one, she can always put them out to pasture because, she'll get a little one. And women have to love the man and accept what they are treated and what they get. And as she says, her sisters are told by their father from childhood that he has received a blessing from God that these girls are supposed to marry a married man. So if a father prophesies his daughter has a vision that I am told you will marry a married man, because she's like 3. Like she said, when they're an adult, of course, she'll say she wants to marry a married man because that's the only one she knows. He knows nothing else, and he accepts that this is what his father, who is God, wants. And he is in a system, a structured environment where no one else, no other outside force or voice is allowed to speak or be heard. It's like I've been waiting for someone in the family to address these specific issues, to actually say the parts I have. Been wanting to say it out loud on this channel for years and not someone who's a woman, right? You have family members like Kristen Decker, who talks about her experiences and what she's exposed to and how she experienced polygamy as a child and as a plural wife. But he wasn't part of Kody Brown's family, was he? So he is not related to Kody. He is not a member of Kody's family. He has no connection with Kody's parents or Kody's siblings. And so it's a different perspective because 1, he can't just talk to Kody because Kody and the family lived in Wyoming at the compound with Ben for a while. And 2, he can cross-reference his own experience with his father and how his father and Kody are very similar. And they're all doing the same thing, right? So I'm just like, I want to scream, yes, 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 finally someone is saying this. And he's about to get a reaction from Kody. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe something has changed because a few years ago, he didn't want to say those things about Kody. And maybe the fact that Garrison is dead and Kody is going about la life like nothing happened has changed his perspective. I don't know, I can't say, but a few years ago, Ben wouldn't have said that about Kody. Ben says, also, the way that they introduced this idea of Robyn into the family was uncomfortable for me because it felt like it was about getting everyone to agree rather than letting everyone have an equal voice about what they thought. I want to give mad props to my cousin Aspen for speaking up. She was like, it's just weird. Thank you for saying the quiet part out loud. It is just weird. And there was something in that conversation that was really icky to me, which was this little clip of Kody saying, hey, this is family business, so we're not going to talk about it outside. This is family business. And that's part of the secret keeping that's just enmeshed in Mormon culture. That there's a face that we show the outside world, and then there's what happens on the inside. And that just breeds abuse throughout that culture. It's really awful. And it makes it really difficult for people like me who start to speak up about that abuse because we're airing the family business for the world. And that's not cool. Because it's family business and family business that leads to lives of incongruence. Because there's like this public image that you're supposed to present. And then there's the private truth of what's actually happening. And that creates a real lack of integrity in Mormon culture because we're supposed to present this really good facade. But see, really what's happening is manipulation, abuse, neglect, just sadness. If you go back and you watch the first episode, and when Kody talks about them joining Robyn's family, it's very clear that there are kids in that family who don't want that to happen. It's very clear that they are upset, but they can't say no like they can't. They can't express their concern about many children. I don't get enough time with you. Why are we going to do it? Mom just had to declare bankruptcy. We don't have enough food. I'm already taking care of all the kids, Dad. Thanks. Logan said, you know, you can say there are some kids out there who don't want to say yes, but they can't say no because Kody is the center of the universe, and he forces it on them, right? So, and then he tells them after him, telling them that he is going to join the family they can't tell anyone. It's a family business. So the secret must be protected. You can't tell someone that it's the father's work, which inevitably proves that what he was doing was wrong. As long as you're doing something and you stand for what you're doing, and it's built on ethics and integrity, you don't have to hide it from other people. If you're making a good decision for your family, your kids won't have to keep it a secret when you force them to keep it a secret about what's going on. Your family, they will not be able to distinguish between something that is offensive and something that is not offensive. So if you're telling them, Like, I'm going to do this, and everybody, you're fine with it. But don't tell anyone. And then if you tell anyone, you're going to be told you're promoting family business and you're protecting the image of polygamy and Mormonism. No, what you know is part of the faith itself, becoming the perfect version and being as perfect as possible and having the best image. And so you never want to tarnish that image. You don't want anyone to know the truth, the seed, the horrible abuse and neglect and horror that is happening in this world. You want to make it look perfect, right? And so children are being prepared to learn how to lie, for not understanding what abuse is and not knowing that they can say no. They are not taught boundaries. They are not taught autonomy. They just have to accept things. And you can't tell me that anyone in this woman's family wanted to join the Robyn family. I do not agree with this at all. I don't believe Meri wanted Robyn in the family. I don't believe Christine wanted Robyn in the family. And I definitely don't think Janelle wanted Robyn in the family. I think that's the story that Kody told on the show about how many seasons he's had 18. I think she had to say that because it would look terrible if we were like, yeah, I'm going to force my family to accept this woman who's going to end up destroying the family because I'm leaving. All for him. I mean, it was nice of him to say that Meri decided it was going to come, and Meri gave me the old lead because Meri was the bait, because it's taking all the responsibility away from her, and she's not a bad person. And then women are falling like fools. And then when they're crying and sad because he's doing it, they're told, but you agreed to it. It's like gaslight all the way around. And Aspen said it was weird. And some of the family members were not at all upset about it, you know. And they said today that they were told to sit down, shut up and accept it, which never works. And it's no wonder why the family is divided and broken. And it's no wonder why some of the Brown children didn't accept Robyn's children, because they didn't want to accept them. They did not like, Father, why are you adding more children to our family? We already never see you, you know? And then when he brings them, he spends all his time with them. Ben's TikTok is amazing. So go and watch the full video. I think he's going to do more, and he's going to do 19 seasons. So I'm grateful that someone in the family is finally saying this. And I'm not the only one like this soapbox constantly saying they're lying. They're not telling the truth. He is confirming what I have reported. So what are your thoughts on it? Don't forget to give some comments on the subject. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, then subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you don't miss the video. Bye, friends.